Welcome everyone to our third annual Women in Industry Luncheon, hosted by the West End Home Builders Industry and the Ontario Home Builders Association. Thank you for partnering with us, Ontario Home Builders Association. My name is Bianca Brzessie. I am the first Vice President of the WHBA and a partner with BDO Canada. And I'd like to thank you again for joining today. We have over 130 attendees today on the call. An excellent turnout. I'd like to thank our partners and sponsors for allowing us to host such a great event today. Today's presenting partner, T. Johns Consulting Group, our diamond partner, Enbridge Gas, platinum partners, BDO Canada, Bell Canada, and RBC Royal Bank. Our gold partners, Customer Insight, Cogeco Connection, the Hamilton Spectator, MTE Consultants, and our silver partners, Reliance Home Comfort, Rogers Communication, and Web ROI, and our bronze partners, Coast Wholesale Appliances, Core Slab Structures, Durwood Jones Barkwell, Federated Insurance, First Ontario Credit Union, and T. Johns Consulting Group. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joe Vaccaro, CEO of OHBA, to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. OHBA is proud to continue to support this event. This initiative was launched by the WHBA, led by the Women in Industry Committee, and supported by the WHBA staff. It is great to see it continue under the current COVID circumstances. I think this speaks to how all HBAs are finding ways to provide service and support the membership during this pandemic. I just want to add that I can confidently say that the speakers today are all great leaders and great people. I've had the pleasure of participating in a number of consultations managed by Cordelia. She not only commands the room, but she also finds a way to engage everyone and give them space to express their positions without undermining the discussion. In my years of both working and knowing Siobhan, it is her approachability and her kindness that continues to draw people into the important work she has done in her career. She knows how to build a big tent and then focus that energy into meaningful outcomes. And of course, one of our own, Sue, who leads by example every day. She's a great example of a member who's busy with her own business, but understands the value of the association work and steps up to serve our home believer community at the local, provincial, and now at the national level through CHBA. With that, I look forward to hearing from all of them. And again, OHBA is proud to support the WIN event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Now I'd like to turn it over to Terry Johns, President of T. Johns Consulting Group, our presenting partner for today's event.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. T. Johns Consulting Group is today's presenting sponsor. We're a small boutique consultant firm here in Hamilton, specializing in urban planning, design, and project management. Geographically, we work in Kitchener-Waterloo, Brantford, Haldimand, Niagara, Halton, and Toronto, and our project list is equally as diverse. I'm honored to be associated with the West End HBA. We are a strong advocacy group for developers and builders, and as Joe highlighted, I'm extremely proud to work with the WIN committee and everything that they're doing. Not only do they support women in our industry, they're also focusing on encouraging young girls into trades and all professions that contribute to home building and development. Having worked in this industry for many years, I can attest to the importance of this priority. I'm thrilled to see the shift in the last few years. Looking around the table or through our Zoom today, I'm thrilled to see the women that we have here at the table. Please know that every change that we make, whether small or large, moves the conversation along, making our voices stronger. In fact, our lunch today is evidence of that. Here we have a president of a building company, a chief communications officer with Rogers, and an assistant deputy minister with our province. strong women here today that I know you're just as excited as I am to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'm Kaylee Corby, a member of the Women in Industry Committee, and pleased to introduce Sue Ostell. Sue Ostell is co-president of Wastel Homes, an award-winning family-owned home builder in London, Ontario, now in its 40th year of business. She is past president and executive member of the London Home Builders Association and second vice president on the board of directors for CHBA. Please welcome Sue Ostell.
Thanks, Kaylee. All right, you are my test bunnies. This is my first Zoom PowerPoint presentation, so bear with me for 1 second as well as I can get that up. All right, I'm almost there, I think. Wait, uh-oh, hold on 1 second, please. It worked before. Uh-oh. Hold on. Share. Oh my gosh. I apologize. Just give me 1 second. Can you see my screen? Anybody?
And Sue, it looks great.
Okay, sorry. It just
No
didn't
worries.
same way that it came up when I practiced. All right. So good afternoon. I'm Sue Wastel, co-president of Wastel Homes, a development and custom home building business based in London, Ontario. First, I want to thank the West End Home Builders Association for inviting me to speak. I'm thrilled to share with you my journey in the home building industry, which began when I was about 14 years old. So during a chance encounter while I was sweeping the driveway of my newly built Wastel family home, I met my husband, Doug. This quick encounter led to a summer job for their company, washing windows, and the start of my passion for home building. To begin, I'd like to share with you one of the most pivotal experiences of my career. In 2016, I traveled to Fort McMurray, Alberta, after the wildfires had decimated the town. Joined by a group of fellow home builders and contractors, we toured Beacon Hill, which was the hardest hit community in Fort McMurray. We met with homeowners who were faced with the impossible task of rebuilding their homes and lives. We listened to their stories, and as they described how they were given just 1 hour notice to drop everything, leave their jobs, gather their loved ones, pets and belongings, and abandon their homes. One road in and out of the entire city. They slowly made their way north with thousands of their friends, neighbors, and family as the fire slowly encroached upon them. We were able to offer tips and best practices for homeowners in wildfire-prone areas to begin the rebuilding process and offer valuable information on how to navigate complicated insurance policies. Our group presented a check to the Red Cross to help with what much needed relief efforts. This experience for me was very enlightening. Yes, I'm in business of building homes, but our skills allow us to do so much more than just build structures. Homes offer safety, stability, belonging, and security for families. And in the face of unimaginable loss, the families of Fort McMurray taught me how valuable our homes really are. The trip also showed me the power of partnership, aligning with other home builders, allowing us to make a huge impact for the community. I have carried these lessons with me always in each of my business, industry, and personal endeavors. In 2016, my husband Doug and I purchased the business from his parents and put our own vision of the company into motion. This included an evolution of our business from home builder to land developer. As our first undertaking with this new focus, we purchased a 9-acre parcel in East London and built 76 townhomes. To align with the shift in our core business, we also sought to revolutionize the way our customers familiarize themselves with our company and ultimately purchase homes from us. So in 2018, we launched a custom developed online interactive home building tool. The goal was to transform the home building process by introducing transparency, simplicity, and interactivity into a traditionally cumbersome process, and to allow an increased global clientele to shop available inventory and even customize their home right from the comfort of their couch. And we found during this pandemic. In our commitment to home building homes high above industry standard, we also partnered with Mike Homes and his Homes Approved Homes program. This prestigious certification is awarded to industry leading builders who demonstrate quality craftsmanship and a dedication to building. The Homes Approved Home program is defined by its inspection process by certified inspectors. And as the only Homes Approved home builder in London, Ontario, we offer additional inspections of all of our new homes and 3 additional statements to verify that durability, efficiency, and final finishing are above all industry standards. In 2018, I took the reins as president of the London Home Builders Association, one of only 3 female leaders to serve as president since the organization's inception in 1952. In this role, I focused on a number of important initiatives to improve the building industry, including housing affordability and the skilled trades shortage. A major focus was developing workable policies to deal with housing affordability, always reminding policymakers locally, provincially, as well as federally, of the impacts that our decisions have on young Canadians. I made this a major focus of my advocacy efforts. With my own children coming into adulthood, I wanted to ensure that home ownership isn't something that's out of reach for Canada's youth. Also in 2018, I became chair of the Canadian Home Builders Association's Urban Council Committee and focused on creating a collaborative approach to urban issues all across government. In an effort to continue my industry involvement on a national level, I was recently elected the 2nd Vice President of the Canadian Home Builders Association Board of Directors, and will one day be our national president, which is a true honor. A huge focus of my personal and professional efforts has been centered around education and promotion of our industry to young people, especially women, who are sorely unrepresented in our field. I thought I would do outside of the day-to-day business with the hopes of inspiring you to seek out how we can all support our industry, each other, and those coming up behind us. This year, I started working with a group of peers to develop a skilled trades education center here in London. As the first of its kind in Ontario, our vision is to establish career in skilled trades as a viable career choice for students as well as adults looking to transition careers. This endeavor was born from the need to ensure the continued longevity and mutual success of the building industry. And I know that CHBA just actually sent out an email this morning stating that by 2029, Canada needs an additional 310,000 people in skilled trades. Something fun, a few years ago, I organized a trip for our local HBA and took 30 members to Chicago for a long weekend of learning, laughing, and team building. We toured the city, ate deep dish pizza, saw a Cubs game, but the highlight was meeting with the local HBA there and discussing their current high priority issues. We came away with some great insight, and a question that government relations officer told us to always remember was, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? This question stayed with me throughout many meetings that I continue to attend today. Sometimes we get so lost in the us versus them mentality that if we just ask this question, then it creates a great starting point, which we may get a result that everyone is happy or mostly happy with. Outside of City Hall, I encountered an issue last fall with my own son's high school construction program. Construction class didn't have enough money in their budget to actually build anything because they couldn't afford the materials. So I used my connections with the local college. We had meetings with our local HBA and encouraged our own recycling representative Try Recycling, to design a program whereby construction materials from the college could be dismantled after the students were done doing and building out their large projects like a shed, then taken to area high schools by the recycling company for the high school students to have those materials to break down and build smaller projects like bookends and toolboxes and so forth. Everyone was super eager to help out at no additional costs. It's all sounded great until some politics got in the way. But we're not giving up, we're still moving forward. And we feel strongly that this could be a very successful partnership in the future. Something else that we do is we establish an annual bursary program with our local college to support female students in the carpentry and renovation program at Fanshawe. Our bursary is awarded to a female student who shows exemplary participation in academic excellence and hopefully encourages other female students to remain in the program. Prior to the pandemic, I regularly visited area high schools to speak with students about the merits of a career in construction. It's encouraging to see more and more women in these classes, but there's still a long way to go. It was great presenting to these young women and men, hoping to spark their interest in a skilled trades career, and I hope that we can get back to the classroom soon. In addition to working the work at LHBA board, we're also involved with the London Health Sciences Foundation, a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to inspire investment in local hospitals. Their hallmark fundraising initiative is the Dream Home Lottery. Wastel Homes has built 14 lottery homes over the years and helped raise millions of dollars towards this organization. All of these commitments and efforts continue to pay off. My amazing team has been recognized as Builder of the Year by our local HBA 6 times in the last 8 years. This summer, we received our first national award from CHBA for our coastal inspired community, the Kokomo Beach Club. I continue to make bold decisions in my business, and sorry, I'm gonna stop that one there. For things like we just purchased a 60-acre site, so we are growing, where we're developing single-family homes, low-rise apartment buildings, community centers, parks, walking trails, and pools. In our company's evolution from custom home builder to developer, this is our largest site yet. To touch quickly on what it's like being a woman in the home building field, I would say at times, some situations can feel daunting. It's not uncommon to be one of only a few or the only woman sitting around the table in meetings. And I think in the past, we could have been perceived that we either didn't know what we were talking about or bitchy on a job site when we're telling a trade that we're not happy with their work, or even intimidating to other female peers. I'm encouraged to say that I'm seeing more and more women stepping forward into bigger roles. And as long as we continue to support each other, there's nothing that we can't do. My career in the building industry began as a teenager cleaning windows in model homes. And over the past 30 years, which is really dating, through active participation in industry associations, volunteerism, and continual learning, I've built on my experience, knowledge, and passion for this incredible and vital industry. This experience brings a holistic and intimate understanding of our industry and the challenges that we collectively face. But it's also brought me a lifetime of friendships that I treasure. I hope that you all continue to pursue your passion in our industry, and hopefully one day we won't be on Zoom and I'll be able to meet up with you in person. Thanks.
That was so wonderful. Thank you so much, Sue. Those stories about Fort Mac, I know sometimes they're hard to hear because, you know, as Canadians, it's a big country, but it feels so small at the same time. So thank you for sharing your experience there. My name is Zoe Taylor. I am another member of the Women in Industry Committee, and I am pleased to introduce Siobhan Palvestine. So as Chief Communications Officer, Siobhan leads the communications and corporate social responsibility programs across Rogers' multiple platforms, including wireless, cable, business services, TV, radio, and sports. She served for 6 years as the CEO of Civic Action, a leading Toronto-based non-for-profit that boosts civic engagement, and builds better cities by unlocking the collective strength of all people and sectors in addressing the most pressing challenges facing society. Previously, Siobhan held senior executive strategy and communication roles with the Ontario government, which included launching a strategy to attract future generations of leaders, which included the award-winning Learn and Work program for youth facing employment barriers, and leading the project team for Trillium Park, the Toronto waterfront green space development. She also held positions at the University of Toronto, the World Bank Group, and Presidential Classroom, a Washington, D.C. based civic education organization. A voice of influence and advocacy on many urban issues, Siobhan was named one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women in 2018. So as if that's not impressive enough, she holds an MA in history, a BA honors degree from Western University, and has completed executive programs at the Harvard Business School and Ivey Business School at Western University. She sits on the boards of Next Canada and the Ivey Business School Leadership Advisory Council. Whew. Please welcome Siobhan.
Thank you, Zoe. You guys, can you see and hear me okay? I feel like it's one of those hostage situations where it's like, blink, I've got my sheets up here so that I can kind of see you.
You look good.
You can see, okay, good. So I want to start by saying thank you for inviting me to be here. Joe Vaccaro has a special place in my heart. We worked together a bazillion years ago. So anytime Joe is related to anything and asks me to do something, I can't help but say yes. But in particular, this topic of women and leadership in an area like no other. You know, I've been in this field of women in leadership through different vantage points. And as you heard from Zoe, my career has spanned, frankly, every single sector. And I've been able to glean a few truths from those experiences, those stopovers in every single sector. And so what I want to talk about this afternoon and why it matters to me about this group in particular is you are so often going to be one of the few female voices around the tables that you have the privilege of sitting in. And so my remarks this afternoon, I'm calling table stakes, lessons served up from leadership tables. And I've gleaned these, there's 4, because each table has to have, a good table has to have 4 strong legs. And as builders, you get that. And so I want to share with you those 4 lessons, leadership lessons that I've gleaned, and hopefully they'll bring a little bit of insight maybe into experiences that you've had too, because these seem to be, through my experience, commonalities across women from all sectors that I've had the privilege of seeing it. I want to first talk about the representation piece, right? So the UN would tell us, and I know they talk about this all the time with government, that we need at least 30%. 30% is when you start to get a meaningful representation around a table, when you go from token to meaningful chunk. And we know that in the trades, all the jobs in the trades, about 4%, right? Something like that, or 4% of those women that are contributing there. And so that makes this hard. That makes that especially hard. And so this first leadership lesson, I call when you get a seat at the table, own it. When you get the seat at the table, own it. Representation matters. And McKinsey would tell us, they do lots of great studies all the time, that adding women isn't just a smart thing to do, but it pays off with the bottom line. In fact, if Canada had the ability to close the labor gap and have representation of women show up in meaningful numbers, you know what that would add to our Canadian GDP? That would add about $150 billion in the next 6 years, right? You don't need an MBA to know that's good math. So representation matters, getting that there. And yet we see on boards today, only about 18% of board positions are held by women. And when you look at some of the trades and construction, that number drops to below 15%. So long-time issue of representation means when you do get a seat at that table, dear God, you got to own it. Okay, so then what do you do when you get in that seat at the table? We talk about the ability to finally get through that door, but when you get there, do you have the confidence to own that voice at the table? I have 2 kids and 2 girls. One of my daughters is 12. At age 12, the confidence gap between boys and girls drops in girls by about 30%. That's unacceptable. That's a mind-blowing statistic that just by virtue of hitting a birthday, by virtue of a sex or gender, you drop by 30%. Unacceptable. And so we need to think about that role of confidence gap and how that holds us back from getting a seat at the table or owning it once we're there. Because until we tackle that piece, it's really going to be hard to have voices resonate. We've been watching a lot of nature shows here at home during the pandemic. It's one of my ways to say, okay, screens are fine so long as we're learning a little bit. And one of my favorite recurring characters is Jane Goodall. You guys know who I'm talking about, the primatologist, and she studied a lot over the years. And I grew up as a kid, like thinking what a magical job this would be, because the image of this woman who studies, monkeys, has meant that 2/3 of primatologists around the world today are women. Why? Because we had this image of what somebody who studies monkeys would look like. And it was a woman. And so it's not coincidence that representation matters. It's not coincidence that role models need to have something that you need to see yourself in there. And this has a big interdisciplinary sense too, where the cross-sectionality of race, right, of socioeconomic level, of gender, all of that comes together with, do I see myself represented at those tables, and can I aspire to get myself there, right? It matters. And so that first leadership lesson around getting a seat at the table is so very important to me that I wanted to make sure it was one of the 4 stools that we talked about, one of the 4 pegs that we talked about today. Before I move on to the next one, I want to give a little tip, if I may, about how to make your voice at the table when there are other women there with you resonate a little longer. I worked in Washington, D.C. for part of my career. I'm still in love with American politics. I won't tell you what side of the aisle, but and so one of the things that I learned studying different White House administrations was this very powerful tool that women used in the office of administration of Barack Obama called Name and Echo. Here's how it worked. Sometimes when you're in a meeting, maybe you've had this experience, you say something and then someone else who is not you, and maybe even a man, says the same thing and then gets credit for the idea, as well as the points for having implemented it down the road. Okay, that's wrong. That's a problem. Because if you get a seat at the table, you want to have your voice and the views that come out of it resonate as yours. So here's how Name and Echo works. Sue's sitting around a table, and Sue has a great idea, and she shares it. And then Zoe, a little bit later in the meeting, says, that idea that Sue shared, I really want to double click on that, or emphasize that, or build off that. She named it, and she echoed it. And I have watched this over these many years as a very effective tool that women use. Many can use it, but in particular women, to be able to make sure that when you get a seat at the table, the voice that comes out of your mouth is heard and credit is given. Okay, so that's leadership lesson number 1. When you get a seat at the table, own it. Leadership lesson number 2, know your value and your values. Back to Washington, D.C. for a second. You can tell that experience had a big impact on my life and career. Dede Myers. Any of you love The West Wing, that TV show? Remember one of the best TV shows ever? She was CJ Craig. That was a character that some believe was sort of modeled off Dede Myers. Dede Myers was the White House press secretary under Clinton way back in the 90s, and she was the first woman to have that role. And she was the second youngest at 31 years of age. She didn't know what she didn't know. And she writes this book and talks about how hard it was to be able to get her to get into the inner circle, and how annoyed she was when she learned how little she was paid compared to her competitors or compared to her peers. Only about 57% of women negotiate their salary. Sorry, I said that backwards. 57% of women have never negotiated their salary. Have never negotiated your worth. Know your value and know what you're worth. The cost of not negotiating salary, per the Carnegie Mellon professor who studied this over many years, can be as much as $1.5 million over the span of your career. Guys, that buys a lot of fill in the blank, shoes, Cabernet, whatever it is that fills your boots. The point is, you have to know your value and you need to be able to advocate for it. And one of the kick me moments of Dede Myers from this book and her experiences is she should have known what kind of value she had, and she should have negotiated for that. And that stayed with me. On average, we know women still make about 87 cents on the dollar. And this has not been a gap that's closing at anything other than a glacial pace. Part of it is systems need to fundamentally change to acknowledge that value. But part of it is we need to be our best advocates for ourselves and move that forward as well. They're saying that it's going to take another 202 years, World Economic Forum, 202 more years to be able to close some of those workplace gaps. I'm not a patient woman at the best of times, but can't we all agree that 202 years feels ludicrous? So know your value, and importantly, know your values. At Rogers, we launched this cool new podcast. We're sponsoring it, and it's called For the Love of Work. Download it. I'm telling you, it's amazing. I learn something every time I listen to a new episode. This weekend, I was raking leaves, and I was listening to episode 3, and it was all about, did you pick the right employer? Your values need to be hooked into something that deserves them, aligns with them, and activates them. And that second piece that I want to take in terms of a leadership lesson is know your value, yes, but know your values. If you're working somewhere that doesn't reflect them, you got to get a new job, gang. It's as simple as that. And the ability to really grow, to have all that passion that you have find its rightful group will come when you've got those values rooted into the same place. So that's leadership lesson number 3. Soft skills are the hard skills. Learn them well. In high school, I remember thinking, my God, what am I going to do when I grow up? And the guidance counselor, they have their ideas. And he was really nice, man. And he's like, you should go into computer sciences because that's going to be an area of growth. Guys, like, so not my thing. So not my forte. And I remember my parents saying, well, Steph, maybe you should look into this because, you know, they say there's going to be jobs in this. There are certain things that may make sense intuitively to study. But some of the soft skills, and I work in the field of communications, which is all about the soft skills, are the hardest ones to have done right. Deloitte tells us that 2/3 of all jobs will rely on these soft skills by 2030. This is the emotional intelligence stuff, right? How do you interpret what's happening in a meeting? How do you do that negotiation? How do you influence people? What's the trust dynamic like that you can do? When you've got a team of teams, are you able to work across different areas of expertise, or are you so singularly minded and don't have those soft skills around empathy and communications and others to be able to bring others along? If you feel you're vulnerable there, my advice, find ways to build those skills up. They aren't soft at all. They are hard to acquire, and they're the best ones to have in your roster. And I say that having seen vantage point from every sector. Roger Martin, brilliant man, used to be the dean of the business school at the University of Toronto. He wrote a book recently talking about the role of resilience, saying that is what we need to be teaching our business school students coming up the ranks. Not efficiencies per se, not how to squeeze more money out or drive more efficiencies in. Resilience as the thesis, the backbone of how we build our business leaders. That stuck with me because that too is one of those soft skills, right? Not really. It is the hardest package to have, but the leadership lesson around soft skills being the hardest and learn them well is the third piece that I want to leave with you. The fourth is one that I see lived out every day of my life, personally and professionally. The fourth leadership lesson is you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I didn't say the 5 people you choose to spend the most time with. I don't know if any of you cook. I'm not so good, but I try. And tofu is one of those things I've learned takes on the flavor of the pan, takes on the flavor of whatever you add to it. It has absolutely no flavor otherwise, right? We're kind of like that, in that the 5 people we spend the most time with flavor us. That's where we're going to get some of our energy from. That's where we're going to get some of our growth from. That's where we're going to get some of our support from. So whether it's in your work life, whether that's in your home life, and let's be honest, right now, those are the same lives. Pick well, because the 5 people you spend the most time with shape you, and you deserve to curate that list pretty darn well. And so those at a very high level, I hope I finished on time, those at a very high level are the leadership lessons that I wanted to be able to share with you today. And listen, I'm in awe of the skills that you guys have. Good Lord, I don't have them. And I can't wait to see what kind of things you build up, not only in the literal sense, in the home building world, but as you build up as a community of women supporting each other and sponsoring the next generation of leaders that are coming up and emulating you. Sponsorship and investing in that next generation is what real leadership is. Having a fancy CV just makes a nice LinkedIn profile. It doesn't make you a leader. So thank you for letting me be part of your afternoon today. And thank you for all the work that you're going to do as you build even more women into this industry in the years to come.
Thank you, Siobhan. That was absolutely incredible, very inspiring. And it makes me proud to be a part of a member on the Women in Industry Committee, where that is our mission, to support women in our industry and create space for us to claim our voice at the table. My name is Caitlin Gillis, and as I mentioned, I'm a member of the Committee and Industry Committee, and I am pleased and honored to introduce Cordelia Clarke Julian. Cordelia was appointed Assistant Deputy Minister of the Ontario Growth Secretariat in April 2018. In her time at the OGS, she has spearheaded initiatives to advance the discussion on growth plan implementation using a collaborative and solution-oriented approach. She is a leader in the conversation around growth management in Ontario and has been recognized for her ability to facilitate discussions between diverse parties in order to generate concrete outcomes. Cordelia supports a transformation in our approach to growth policy to broadly consider all 5 facets of management, including infrastructure, demographics, and economic growth. Prior to joining OGS, Cordelia worked as the Director of Business Innovation Office and Corporate Services Branch in the Ministry of Labour. In the Government of Ontario's Cabinet Office, Cordelia was involved in the establishment of the original growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe in 2006, as well as plans for the Seton lands in North Pickering. She has held several other senior positions in the Ontario Public Service, in the Ministry of Labour, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Revenue. Cordelia has an honors bachelor's in history from is a graduate of McMaster University, York University, and has a postgraduate certificate in public relations from Humber College. Please welcome Cordelia.
Well, thank you, Caitlin. I should bring you and have you come around with me each time to introduce in terms of those visas.
I would love that. Sorry, Terry.
So I thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to come today. I don't have any fancy slides like Sue and Siobhan, so I'm just gonna really just talk off the cuff with respect to women in leadership, and in particularly talk a bit about my experience as being, a Black woman, surprise, surprise, in an industry that you don't see a lot of us in. And I had the benefit, as Siobhan has said, to work with Joe for a really long time, not in this industry, in different capacities in the government of Ontario. And so I really appreciate that you've given me this opportunity. I just want to say that I echo with respect to the things that Sue has said in terms of the impacts of things that you see and how you've come through the industry. But I also echo the things that Siobhan has said in terms of the lessons from a leadership table. And so I thought for my sort of portion, I wanted to give you a bit of a perspective as a Black woman in leadership at the table with respect to going forward and the types of things in terms of the skill sets and stuff that we need to be cognizant of. I say to folks, it's interesting when they ask me, what was the secret? Like, what's the secret? How did you get to where you got to? Like, what did you do? And those types of things. And, it's actually, I was jumping up in my seat, wanted to say, yay, Siobhan, say it. I say to people, one of the number one ingredients for me was resiliency. I will tell you, not a soft skill, my friend. As Siobhan talks about knowing your worth and owning your seat and really pushing yourself forward on that, all very true. We know from the perspectives of women making 87 cents on the dollar, Black women make 61 cents. So, you know, from that perspective, and that's regardless of age and education and access and those types of things. So you know, the challenge we have is real. It is a challenge in particularly in what I call industries in which you don't typically see us in these pieces. Is it a case where I have gotten used to walking in rooms where I am the only person of color? Absolutely. Have I gotten used to being in the sense that I walk into a room and I'm probably the only woman? Yes, that has happened too. But it's unfortunate, but we can change that. And I think, you know, it's about having these conversations and being willing to be real and have these discussions in terms of not only supporting women, but also women of color and the different types of experiences that women of color may be wrought with as opposed to non-women of color. So I would say to you, resiliency for sure has been my skill or whatever you want to call superpower, I would say, in terms of the setbacks that you face and you look at. For example, I was talking to someone, I said, you know, it's quite interesting and again, just sharing my experience, you know, you run into conundrums as you sit at those tables and you sit and you do, you look around your surroundings. And some of the conundrums I would say, for example, I'll share a couple of them with you. It's the conundrum of the visibility and the invisibility. So the visibility that you are the only one. You know, you are the only one in terms of a woman of color sitting around the table. And so you have different perspectives and or lived experiences, but you are very much invisible because there isn't someone else who could say, yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from in that. And so there are many women of color who will sit and not say anything because they are the only one. And so what I have said to those women is, no, you need to take advantage that you are the only one. Your voice has to be heard. You need to take the opportunity and own that, as Siobhan talked about, but really step forward and use it as an opportunity to be more visible with respect to those things, you know, and not feel as, you know, as some would say, ignored, because while they're the only one, they are quite invisible because they may not see things in the same way. So I've encouraged mentors of mine really push forward and have the confidence, the courage to say what is on your mind, and to also seek out allies when you do feel that you are the only one on the table. You know, there are allies that are there that you can work with, because you cannot move forward without those allies. The second conundrum, especially as a Black woman specifically, and, you know, I know other women, non-women of color also have said this, but as a Black woman, one of the things I know is a conundrum for me is the notion of being passionate, because as most of you could see, I am very lively and I could be passionate and I will get in there and it's like, okay, no, we need to look at this. And balancing that with the whole notion of, oh, here we go, angry Black woman, right? So you're constantly thinking about these types of things. And when I talk about these conundrums, these are the things as a woman of color, as I walk into leadership tables, these are the things that I continue to think about as we go forward. And it can be very exhausting, you know, as you sit there and you're really having to weigh your words very carefully as you go forward, because of the challenge of, okay, am I coming across too angry here? Or am I coming across as someone who's really passionate about the space of planning or the space of how we're going to build complete communities and those types of things, or have housing supply for future generations, those types of things as you go forward. And then finally, the other conundrum that you tend to see is, as what I would call myself, I am a self-professed change agent. I love change. I love to see change. I love to see growth. I tell folks this all the time. So as a self-professed change agent, I am constantly coming at things with, well, how can we do this differently? Why must we maintain status quo? I mean, frankly, if we maintain status quo, and if that was the attitude for our society, I probably wouldn't be sitting at most of those tables. So I'm always looking at, you know, how can we do change? But the challenge with that conundrum is that on the other side of that, you get the notions of, oh, but she just doesn't understand. She doesn't get it. Oh, you know, that's okay. You know, she doesn't get how we do things, right? And so those are the types of conundrums in terms of, as a woman of color, you come forward and you're trying to provide some of those lived experiences in terms of potential change. And folks, you know, don't tend to understand that because it's a notion of, well, you just don't get it. And I encourage people to think about that as they go forward with respect to, dealing with and helping and supporting the future generation of women, because it's a notion of there is a right answer. And, and if you don't have the right answer, then you're not a good fit. Right? Well, what does that mean? And so how do you allow for that access to come in and to allow for more people to access that as we go forward? So those are some of the things that I would leave you with in terms of sort of my lessons learned as we go forward in terms of being a Black woman in leadership. What I would say to you with respect to the resiliency, which is I call my key ingredient, that's based on what I call my four stool. I know there's usually 3 legs, but I call it 4. And those are the skills of what I call emotional intelligence, the skill of authenticity, the skill of agility, and the skills of being humble or humility. And those are the 4 things that have allowed me to be as resilient as I am going forward, recognizing that, there are times that you do need to bounce back and you do need to get up, brush yourself off and go back in and get ready again for the fight in terms of those pieces. And emotional intelligence, our EQ, is so paramount to that, because as a woman of color walking in, I am constantly aware that I am the only one in the room, because usually I am actually shocked when I'm not, actually, which is a sad state of affairs. So I'm constantly aware of that. You're constantly having to make sure you read the room. You're constantly making sure that you are being deliberate and intentional in some of the things that you're saying and some of the things that you want to leave people with. From an second piece of that is being myself, authentic. I can tell you that, folks ask me, how do you stay true to yourself? Probably similar to as Siobhan talked about, the people, the 5 people that you choose to spend the most time with, that's my family. Because they keep it real, because none of my family cares that I have a title that says Assistant Deputy Minister. As far as they're concerned, that's mom, and what are we having for dinner tonight, right? So it's keeping it real, right? Like, this is who I am, this is the package, and making sure that you're able to convey that to the best of your ability. The other piece of that is the agility. And that is the ability to respond quickly to the changing of the flow and the wave and the different pieces. And really recognizing that, there are things that you do have control and there are things that you just don't. And so it is really being agile enough to be able to address those. And finally, humility. I cannot tell you how the ability to be humble is so key. And when I mean by humble, by meaning that, you learn from everybody. One of the tricks of the trade, folks may know this or not. One of the things I used to tell folks is whenever I went into a new department, so I moved into a new role, the first people I talked to was the administrative assistants. Why? Because they're the ones who know everything that's going on. Right? I didn't talk to my directors. I wasn't talking to my managers or whoever or the persons above me. I would talk to the administrative assistants, and I would understand the dynamics, the flows, the politics, right? And I seek to understand. So that's one of those things that as we go forward in terms of the resiliency that you need to move forward and support, that is what I would say to you in terms of that. So as we talked about, the different sort of experience, I would say, as a woman of color, as a Black woman in particular, as you go through leadership, I would say to you that I always do this as I talk to folks and people are listening. I say, okay, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. And for those of you who are women of color, what I would say to you is, here is your challenge. What I want you to do is practice being resilient. Yes, it takes practice, believe it or not. It is a skill to develop, and you can continue to work on that skill with respect to that. I want you to recognize and embrace yourself. That is who you are. That is your brand. That is what you sell. You're not for everyone. I've told people that already. I am not the person you hire if you want things to just stay the same. That's not me. I am that person who will walk in and say, what can we change here? So, recognize again who you are and what it is that you bring to the table. And that is what you market, and that is what you sell, because that is what is amazing, and it's you. And trust me, it's all good, right? The third challenge I would say is seek out allies. You are not going to be successful without allies. This is not a game in which you play by yourself. That is not a piece in which you can just make it on your own, because nobody makes it on their own. So you seek out allies, seek those who can support and help you to do the things and do the pathways in which that you're looking to, if you are aspiring to be a woman in leadership in terms of that. And again, if you're already a woman in leadership, give me a call, because I haven't seen many of us. Okay, that's for the women of color. For the non-women of color, love you. Love you, love you, love you. But here is the challenge that I want to put on you. What I want you to do is first look within your own sphere of influence. What can you do in your own sphere of influence to begin and to promote women of color? Right? Look around you. You all have your own sphere of influence. I'm not talking about your organizations. I'm talking about your social networks and other areas, your work that you're doing with associations like this, and other things that you're doing with your volunteer time in terms of your sphere of influence. So look at that and see, what are you doing to support that? So, as we push forward, one of the things totally support you with on, Sue, is women in trades. And that was one of the things I was working on when I was at Labor, in getting more women, and particularly women of color, in the trades, because we're good. We're all good, right? And so what can we do to really push those envelope? The second thing I would say to you is, those of you who are in leadership position as non-women of color, look in your own organization. Right? What can you do in your organization to recognize, acknowledge, and support those next generation, support the women in those organizations to do that? And if you don't have any, then I think you have a little bit more work to do on that front. So I challenge you to look within your sphere of influence, but look within your own organizations all the way down, and see what your organizations are doing to promote this. And finally, what I would say to you as a challenge is, find a woman of color to mentor. Find one, right? You don't have to formally say to them, hey, I want to mentor you. But there are women of color that are there in the industry, and it is a very simple conversation of, hey, if you need some advice, just give me a call. You're not looking that you have to set up a formal mentorship program, because I can tell you most of my mentors have been very informal. But find a woman of color to mentor, right? And provide that support with respect to those things. And if you want to know and want to get a sense of what you can talk to that person about, talk to her about, and say, I'm always around, feel free to give me a call. You know where to find me. That's it for today.
Thank you, Cordelia. Challenge absolutely accepted. I think we'll be putting that on the agenda for our next WIN committee, and adding that extra layer of perspective of what we can do to build up women, especially in our industry. So again, I am Caitlin Gillis, a member of the WIN committee. I'm also an urban planner with T. Johns Consulting. So on behalf of T. Johns, the presenting sponsor, WHBA and WIN, we thank you, Sue, Siobhan, and Cortina, for joining us to share your message as women in leadership, with a passion for engaged and resilient communities where everyone has a place at the table to change the status quo. Community building is multifaceted and multidimensional, which requires the collective strength of leaders with intentional passion behind their influence to build up the inspired. As a member of WIN and a young woman in the industry, I think I can speak on behalf of many of us zoomed in that we have multiple mentors in the virtual audience and on the virtual stage that have proven over and over again that yes, we can, yes, we will, and yes, we will own it. And thank you to everyone who has zoomed in to make the virtual third annual Win Luncheon a success. For those who would like to join the online social networking, the link is on the chat and it starts at 1:15. If you're having any troubles, you can email Elena or Cindy at westendhba.ca. And thank you again. And as our committee chair, Carla Agostino would say, have a great day and get into a little bit of trouble. Thank you again, everybody.